My name is Jack Valero. I'm one of the two founders of Catholic Voices, and I'd like to tell you briefly about the story of the project, which goes back to late 2009 when there was a debate organized by Intelligence Squared in Methodist Sentinel Hall in London, and it was about the Catholic Church. And the Catholics who spoke were not as good as those who spoke against the Church, with the result that the debate was lost massively, and it led to a rethink about how is it possible that we have such great messages in the Church and are not that good at communicating them. Then we heard the Pope was coming, Pope Benedict was coming to beatify Cardinal Newman in Birmingham in September 2010. And this visit had been opposed by certain groups. A few people, but quite influential, had complained that the Pope should not come, or at least if he did come, the state should not pay for such a visit. And this created media interest. And we thought, and a friend of mine called Austin Ivory and myself thought, this is a great opportunity for us to prepare people to be in media when the media take an interest in this visit. So we put out a call, and many people offered themselves for the project, and we chose the best 20, and we trained them over a few months to be able to study the different topics, controversies that had come up, and to prepare themselves with media training for the visit. The result was that when the Pope came, we were in more than 100 programs, news programs on television and radio, those 4 days, and we were quite visible. The visit itself was a great success for this and many other reasons, and so the bishops who had been looking at our project thought, wow, this really works. So we would like you to continue to train people in different cities and Catholics, lay Catholics, so that they can keep communicating, and not just in media, TV, or radio, but throughout the Church, in schools, in parishes, in university chaplaincies. So the project expanded throughout the country in the years following 2010. But another thing happened. We started getting calls from abroad, people who had been watching the visit and had heard of Catholic Voices. And so very soon we got calls from Spain, where the Pope was going for the World Youth Day in 2011. And we went there to help prepare a group. We always said local groups have to be local. We're not going to go to a country and set up a group ourselves or impose our ideas, but we can give our techniques, our materials, our book, and so on, and people in the country have to do it themselves, as long as they have a positive view of the media and the world and the Church, and they involve people of all different sensibilities of the Church, and they have the permission of the local bishop of Bishops' Conference. And so we went to Spain and we helped to train some people, and they organized themselves for World Youth Day. And then we got a call from Mexico, where the Pope was going in February 2012, and we again went there and trained a group of people. And then we went to the USA, and then to Chile, and the countries continued to we continued to get calls from different countries in Europe and America and North and South, and we went to all these countries to offer the training and gave them our materials. Of course, by then the book of the project, How to Defend the Faith Without Raising Your Voice, had been written by Austin and Kathleen and published, and then it started to be translated first into Italian, then French, then Dutch, eventually into Spanish. So now the Portuguese, there are 6 different language versions of this book, and different editions. The Spanish edition, there was one in 2019, the 8th edition, where they've gone through various changes. And with this book and all the various trainings we did in different countries, the project is now active in about 20 countries around the world. Some projects started and finished and didn't continue, but many did continue. And we are very happy to know that this method that we developed with a view to preparing the visit of Pope Benedict in the UK has been spreading around the world and has been useful in Chile, for example, when Pope Francis went in early 2018, and there was a crisis, and there was the abuse crisis, and the project the people from Catholic Voices were very instrumental in being in media and explaining what was going on and helping Catholics to understand. It's been very influential in Malta, where the project has been speaking about the refugee crisis and the migrant crisis, where they are there very near Africa, where many boats of migrants come, and where the problem is very acute. It's been instrumental in Italy in training people in and around the church in the Vatican, and where the project has taken the name Nel Dialogo, in dialogue, because really our project is about creating this culture of encounter that Pope Francis speaks about from 2016. As sons and daughters of God, we are called to communicate with everyone without exception. The Church's words and actions are meant to convey mercy, to touch people's hearts, which really summarizes what the project was about, which was started 6 years before this quote was given. In fact, it came from the time of the hostility to the visit of Pope Benedict to the UK when he was coming to beatify Cardinal Newman in Birmingham. There were groups of people, influential people, who said they didn't want the Pope to come because his views didn't represent modern Britain, or at least they didn't want the state to pay for the costs of the visit. And we felt we wanted to tell our story as Catholics, in a way that communicated to people what we believed, what we held in our hearts very deeply, and yet we were not so able to do it well because we felt this rejection. We have a great message, but people aren't really listening to it. That's a very good question. Why aren't they listening to it? And thinking about this, we saw that among other reasons, one of the reasons why people aren't listening is that rather than listening to us, what they hear when we speak is what they already think about us. So in terms of communication, they're hearing a frame. A frame is all the prejudices and ideas they have about you when you speak or when you are the subject of a news story. So if they are talking about the church, before they listen to our message or they understand it or they can make sense of it, they're already thinking, well, this is Catholic, obviously it's retrograde, it's trying to impose a teaching, it's homophobic, it's misogynist, it's a whole sort of ideas, all sorts of ideas that come to their heads, which are much louder in their head than anything that we might say. And so we thought, well, if we're going to get out of these frames in order to be heard, we need to understand what they're thinking about us, so that we can connect with it and see what we can do about it. So we did first think about what do they think of me, and I think that's a good question before you speak, is to listen and what do they think of me. And as I was saying, they think that I hate gays because I don't allow their lifestyle, or I don't allow gay marriage, or I'm not in favor of gay marriage, and that I hate women because I don't allow them to be priests. We don't allow them to be priests. We don't allow them to be in government, in the church. They think that we put a lot of emphasis on our doctrine on life or marriage, for example. In fact, one of the main things they think about is that we put our teachings and our ideas and our reputation and our possessions before the real needs of people. And I think this comes across in all the different topics that come up that are controversial. The riches in the Vatican, that we appear to be more interested in the things we have than in looking after the poor. We appear because in fact the church looks after many more people everywhere in the world, but this is the impression given. We appear to put our doctrine on life before the needs of a girl who has been raped and who is in trouble. We appear to put the teachings on marriage before the happiness of two men who love each other. We appear to put the reputation of the church before the protection of children who may be abused. We appear to put our our institution before the real needs of people, which is curious, as I was saying, because the founder of our religion, Jesus Christ, came to earth. He didn't mind the rules. He touched lepers, he talked to women, he cured on the Sabbath. His main thrust was helping the person. And here we are perceived to be putting our rules and our things before people, the other way around. And so that's why is this happening, and what we can do about it. Well, the next step is to think, what do I think of the people who criticize me? And when I think about this, I often realize that I think negative things also. You know, they are trying to impose their ideas on me. They're very close-minded. They don't listen. They are ideological. They put their ideas before the real needs of people. It's more or less a mirror image of what they think about me, I think about them. And so that led us to really the key thought of the method of Catholic Voices, which is this, that every criticism against the Church is always based on a Christian idea. It always comes from a Christian value, from a value we share. Because our society comes from Christianity, and Christian values are immersed all over society, the seeds of the gospel are everywhere. And so we find that even the criticisms that the Church gets are based on Christian ideas. For example, the care of the person. The care of the person is the most important Christian idea. The care of the victim. Before Christianity, victims, maybe they were killed, they were thrown out of the village, they were stoned, they were isolated, and Christ came and became a victim. And since then, we have understood that our religion is all about caring for the person in need. And so, and in the case of abortion, you know, when the perception is that the Church is more interested in its doctrine than in the needs of the girl who has been raped and is in great need, the fact of thinking about this person is a positive value, is the value of compassion, of Christian empathy and compassion, which is very important. And similarly in euthanasia, you know, the compassion for the person who is suffering, or for gay marriage, you know, the love of two people. The value that's behind the criticism is there's always there a Christian value. Not all the values are Christian, some values we don't share, but we find that when we study the topics in detail, the actual key value in that criticism is a Christian value. And that's really interesting. This is what the Pope says. Look at this. We must first listen. Communicating means sharing, and sharing demands listening and acceptance. Listening means paying attention, wanting to understand, to value, to respect, and to ponder what the other person says. And this is what I was saying, that when you want to communicate something, you have to listen to the criticism and where it comes from, and find the value behind it that is Christian. And so the method of Catholic Voices, which is called reframing, follows these 3 steps. First, we listen to the other side, and we find and the criticism, and we understand it as well as we can. So the first thing is not to speak, but to listen very carefully. Secondly, we find the Christian value behind what they're saying, the shared value, the value we share. And third, we then put across our message starting from the shared value, starting from that point. We start speaking from the point of view of the other person, because we realize that that value that they hold comes from us. And that's how communication works. It works like this. And as I was saying, for example, in the case of abortion, that we find the common value. The criticism is that we seem to be, the first step, the criticism is we seem to be putting our doctrines over and above the needs of a girl who is in need. The common value is the needs of the woman who is in need, who is suffering. And the message our pro-life message communicates much better if we start from the needs of the woman. And so we need to develop these arguments based on the common value, and that works for every case. And I always find a very interesting exercise is to read the newspaper, find an article that really challenges me and which I disagree with in one of these moral topics, and there are some most days in most newspapers, and try and, instead of getting angry, try to make this analysis. You know, what is the frame here? What are they thinking about me? What is the criticism, the implied criticism they're making about me? Second, what is the value that's driving them, that's Christian, that I share among all the different values that move them? What is the one value that I really share 100%? And third, how would I frame my reply to this, starting from this shared value? And I find this a very, very useful exercise with newspapers, with articles, with news pieces on the TV or the radio. And here is what the Pope says about this in the same document we've been quoting. Communication has the power to build bridges, to enable encounter and inclusion, and thus to enrich society. How beautiful it is when people select their words and actions with care in the effort to avoid misunderstandings, to heal wounded memories, and to build peace and harmony, which is really what we're trying to do with the reframing method. So in summary, I'd like to say, and the method can be expanded for several sessions, but there's these 3 points that that I've been saying. One is that every controversy is an opportunity to communicate our message in a way that works for us. Second is to tell our story, we need to step outside the frames which prevent us being heard. And third, that to step outside the frame, we need to find the shared value and start our explanation from there. And this works, and the main effect of this is not just to communicate, but to change me inside. I sometimes am asked, how many people have you converted with this process? And I said, and I usually say, well, I don't know how many people have been watching, but I know at least one person who's been converted, and that's me, because I used to want to impose my ideas, or at least I was perceived to want to impose my ideas, but now I'm listening to people and I'm finding out that we all want the same, and I'm explaining the doctrines that I've learned since my youth and that I hold very dear, and I'm explaining them by connecting them with what people really want. And this works. And now we're still getting calls. We're getting calls from the Philippines, from Kenya in Africa, and from other countries where Central America, the Caribbean, where they want to start the project as they've seen it starting in different countries. So we hope that with time, this is a global project that can be validated in the Vatican and given special status, and help lay people all around the world to learn how to communicate joyfully and in an empathetic way the things that we believe.